It's an abusive environment. It's all about control. And I guess at some point it starts off about control, like trying to, to punish to some degree, but then, like all things, it gets carried away because you have human beings in positions of power. So, so many things. I mean, let me give you an example, right? So you could imagine how important talking on the telephone is to an inmate. I mean, you're separated from your family, the people you love. Your only connection to your family is through the telephone or via email. So typically you have, you have 300 minutes a month to speak, which isn't a lot to start with. You pay for it. And in every conversation, you're limited to 15 minutes. So most people are rationing. It's very ordinary to see guys at their phone with their watch in hand, actually timing their conversation because they got to budget out the minutes they have in a month. Because 300 goes by very, very quickly. And there's always that possibility that something will happen that you need to speak to somebody. There's an emergency at home, God forbid, right? But so you're always aware of that in the back of your mind. So when I got to FCI Allenwood after spending 14 months in MCC New York, I had my telephone and my email and everything was fine. And then one day I get called into my case manager's office. Now just think about case manager, or your counselor. Just the titles alone imply that they're here to sort of help you or go-to people for you, right? But they're not like that. They're there just to impede you and put up roadblocks. So I had a miserable guy as a case manager. He was the laziest motherfucker you could ever meet, right? And he didn't give a shit about me or about anybody. And so he calls me into his office and tells me they're putting a public safety factor on me. I go, well, what's a public safety factor? Well, it's because of your charges. We're limiting your telephone and your email. You're down to 30 minutes. And I said, what do you mean, man? 30 minutes a month? That's all I'm going to have? Yeah. Why? Because that's what we do. That's what has to happen. You got a public safety factor. I go, but I've been 14 months in New York. I've never done anything wrong. I don't do anything wrong on the phone. That's the way it is. You got a public safety factor. And so you got only 30 minutes a month. Well, how do I get my minutes back? Over time, we'll evaluate every time you come to team meeting. Team meeting is like once every 6 months. We'll evaluate, and if you've been out of trouble and you haven't done it, we'll give you back some minutes, right? So I'm like freaking out. I can't believe this is happening to me. And immediately that day, my phone is shut off to 30 minutes. So now, I have to tell my family I'll only be calling once a week and we can only speak for 2 minutes, right? So here's what I did. I wrote a letter to somebody, and I write about this person in my book, and I write a letter to somebody asking for help. They have a lot of influence. There's a rabbi who I met, and I wrote him this letter and pleading for him to help me get my phone time back. And I don't know if he can even do that. Probably not, because when it's a security issue, he has really no influence. He was good at other things. Anyway, I wrote to him, and then that first month passed where your 30 minutes were up, and it's a new month, and you get your minutes back, right? So normally I'd have 300 new minutes. And I go in, I punch in my code, right? And it says I have 300 minutes. And I'm freaking out, right? I don't know why I got him back. I don't know if it's because of this letter I wrote or because it was just a mistake on their part. But I said, I don't care what. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell a soul because I'll tell other inmates and some other inmate will go and tell. He'll rat me out and I'll lose my minutes. So listen to this. That was in my first year in Allenwood, right? With 6 months left in my sentence, they woke up and discovered that I had all my minutes the whole time. Now this is the weirdest shit because I would go to team meetings and this guy would sit across from me and he'd go, Stelman, you got your 30 minutes. Do you want me to see if I can get you more minutes? And I would say, I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to, so I would just say, nah, man, everything's fine just the way it is. Leave it the way it is. Because I knew how lazy he was. If you would have said that to me, I'd be going, that's bizarre. And I'd start checking. But these people are so lazy that I knew he wouldn't check, right? So anyway, I used to say that. I used to walk out, but actually I'd be sweating every time I had team because I thought maybe they'd discover it, right? Anyway, one day I got 6 months left. I get called into his office. He says, Stelman, what do you have all your minutes? I go, I don't know. What do you mean? I thought you gave them back to me. He goes, I never gave them back to you. He goes, we're taking them away. And so we got into a whole big thing, and I had to go to the warden and all of this, but that's not the part of the story I want you to hear, the abuse. I want you to hear, like, he says, I said, man, I never understood. Like, you told me I had 30 minutes, but I had 300 minutes the next month. And he goes, yeah, when I come to team, and I would say, just leave everything the way it is. And then he said to me, well, I never understood why you would say that. I said, well, listen, man. He says, we're taking your minutes away now. I go, you can't do that. I would have had all my 300 minutes back by now. You can't just retroactively punish me for your mistake. But he did. Right back down to 30 minutes. And then I fought. And this is in my last 6 months. Again, those obstacles that, get in your way and could cause you to jack your time. So I fought and I fought and I fought and finally settled on 200 minutes. And I just, I took it as a win. That's the kind of abuse, it's for no reason, just this mental abuse.